G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and a fantastic Wednesday. Happy hump day. Now today we have a lot to go over. We're going to look at some footage of some planes being destroyed as well as some claims about planes. We need to look at what Zelensky has said in Germany, as well as we'll look at new Patriot systems promised to Ukraine. Of course, then we'll have a look at the maps and we'll also talk over some claims on the maps as well, geolocations, a bit of everything. But we need to talk about missing in action and killed in action, and what some of my more keen-eyed, eagle-eyed viewers noticed yesterday in the start and the end of the video that lines up, that is definitely worth talking about. Now, like everything, I know I'll get a lot of criticism for this, even of people who know that I'm right, but I don't push their idea or their narrative, so therefore I must be the enemy. But I've always said that I'm for the lads at the front and then their families before any government or any pushing of whatever. And if I were born in a different nation, that would then be me. And I believe a lot of these bloggers and YouTubers and whatever blatantly pushing information of which they know may be detrimental to those guys is doing a huge disservice to them as well. We see this in the informational space and things then having a negative effect. But what are we then talking about, Willie? Well, it was this. So this was put out by Deep State, of course, a Ukrainian mapping company that works with the Ukrainian MOD. And they talk about the failures in the Avdiivka direction of no communication between units, people walking off the line, no defensive works, things like this. But down here, they say this, interestingly, are the numbers of losses of one of the battalions, where the dead are X and the missing are 24X, so 24 times MIA to KIA being reported. The bulk of the latter actually had died. Now, this is interesting and this lines up, and I missed this yesterday. Now, this goes into a lot of the rumours and a lot of the information we're hearing about people being put down as MIA instead of KIA for a number of reasons. And remember, propaganda, good propaganda, need not to lie. It tells the truth in the appropriate form. So is this happening? Well, potentially. Is it being done maliciously, or is it being done because people are irretrievable? Well, that is where the question then is. But let's talk about this, and let's talk about why this may be happening. Is it incentivized, and where we see it up and down on the front line? And this is not just Ukraine. We see this in Russia as well. And we need to talk over some stuff, and it lines up with then what we spoke yesterday about the confirmation of troops from Wagner PMC. So this was from Wagner PMC. The payments to relatives of deceased fighters, they contain 20,000 records, but this was a payment then of 1.2 billion USD, excluding salaries and injury compensation. This was just for then the confirmed KIA. That is a hell of a lot of money. Now, how you get that figure was that they showed then that 5 million rubles or $55,000 payment stipulated the contract of Wagner PMC on death in combat. This is a huge, huge amount of money. And I've reached out to some people and asked about this sort of stuff as well. Now, let's look at this. We know there are many people who are missing. Now, however, this is from the Kiev Independent. If the soldiers do not appear on the prisoners of war list provided by Russia, the missing soldiers, their relatives, and the state are stuck in limbo. Relatives of missing soldiers can continue to receive their salary of loved ones unless their death is confirmed after a body identified, which is a one-time $400,000 payment of guarantees offered. So $400,000 then given. Now, what we've heard before and had speculated is payment issues, that guys go MIA and then the money is kept within the unit, either paying for unit expenses or being funneled through corruption. And this is not one side or the other. We've heard this operating on both sides of this, and we see things like this. And this was in the call. Russian soldier says that Kremlin counts a soldier missing rather than dead to avoid paying compensation. It's beneficial for you to tell me he's not missing. So we see, this isn't a one-sided thing, but we need to discuss more and more of this. And I reached out to a person and said, that's the real problem. The unit I was working for in Bakhmut and couldn't get the dead or injured or picked up by the enemy. So without a label as their condition, wives couldn't claim. So this is from a Ukrainian guy I know. Was saying that because the bodies couldn't be then identified, this money could never then actually be claimed. Of course, we can see that there are a lot of people and a hell of a lot of money in this. Where are they? Angry relatives rally in Kyiv over missing soldiers. I reported this at the time, and then the Centre for Disinformation came after me and said this never happened, which we know it did from geolocated footage of these happening. Relatives of soldiers missing in action taken prisoner for protesting in Kyiv Monday, accusing Zelensky and military leadership of failing to help them. And this is similar to the one before we showed of Russian relatives saying, where are our sons as well? So how many are we talking? Well, this is the most recent, Feb 27th, 2024. This MP said 7,000 to 8,000 Ukrainian soldiers are MIA. Now, we know MIA, KIA, WIA is just part of war. But you can see how, if you extrapolate these numbers times by that 400, that is a hell into the low billions of dollars. Now, this is another one, mid-April 23, 7,000 Ukrainian soldiers remain missing, and then missing was updated in early October to 15,000. So to get a number on this is almost bloody impossible. But this goes into many saying, how can there be such a critical troop shortage and shortage of workers when we hear the numbers being told are, 30,000 KIA, what would mean somewhere 90-ish thousand wounded. And Al Jazeera put up this only yesterday. Ukraine desperately needs new soldiers. How can that be so desperate if the numbers relatively are low compared to where Ukraine says has lost well over now 500,000. We showed yesterday in the video that when we showed the losses on both sides, that they're confirmed from sources going through obituaries and Facebook seems to be fairly similar. Now, does this mean that there was a line at 30K? No. This may be actually the official number actually given, but a hell of a lot MIA, because maybe Russia won't send their back the bodies, or the bodies are irretrievable, or you never know how that reporting actually is done. And we can see by what I've laid out here, there may actually be incentive to under-report then the KIA and over-report maybe the MIA, while continuing then to receive funds through. And I'm not exactly sure how all that payment goes. It's hard to know. And most of the foreign fighters I've spoken to, most of them have never got paid. So we know there's already payment issues. And a problem we could see in this is then higher ups, the commanders above, say, unit level, if there's underreporting of then what has happened, KIA, MIA, whatever, higher up may think, well, this unit is X strong, and then put them into a position where they have operational failures, and that could be due to the underreporting of what they believe the strength of that unit actually was. Now, let me know what you think of this. I just thought this was interesting to put forward, and we saw Deep State then claim this, and this was concerning, that 24 times were then considered missing. And we're not sure what actually became of that. How was that cleared up? Because we know no official figures are ever released there. But it is interesting to look at, and people will pay it off as propaganda. What I'm saying is we see claims of it happening as far as MIA and where are our kids, blah, 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 on both sides of this. And I think, a couple of years in, we need to look at POWs and whatever. And the only thing that I hope comes out of this peace conference, because the peace conference is not going to include Russia or China or some high level delegates, even from Australia is not sending high level, and or India's not either, is there has been floated the idea of a complete POW swap, everyone for everyone. And that would be great, just to get people out of being a prisoner. We see how, the condition of prisoners being swapped back. Now, before we go on, this shouldn't be in this folder, but we have seen that the restrictions have been lifted against Azov Brigade from the US. Now, it was barred about a decade ago from using American arms because US officials determined that some of its founders espoused racist, xenophobic, ultranationalist views, and UN human rights officials accused the group of humanitarian violations. But one-time volunteer militia absorbed into the Ukrainian National Guard will have access to the same US military assistance than any other unit. Now, does some of this exist? Yeah, people say it doesn't. Does it exist? Yeah. Now, does this exist in Australia or America or UK or whatever? Yes, as well. The difference was it wasn't state-sanctioned and put into a volunteer unit that wasn't then put. If you started a militia like this in a European, EU country, Australia, America, it would be quashed within seconds. That was where the difference was. The State Department has been unclear about the origins and timing of the restrictions on Azov. The agency provided a statement saying that After a thorough review, Ukraine's 12th Special Forces Azov Brigade passed this vetting as carried out by the US Department. Now, we have seen before that there was videos pop up of these units using Western weapons and then they were deleted. Other people are reporting this. And I would say that the ability to get weapons and stuff in Ukraine, it would have been some handoff, but training and then extra stuff, yeah, it's going to go forward. This law, which prevents US military assistance from going to foreign units credibly found to have committed major human rights violations. It is named a former senator, who wrote the legislation. The State Department found no evidence of such violations in its statement says. The State Department spokesman declined to answer follow-up questions. So, yeah, it's one of those things that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but I think it will be interesting to see what happens after this war to particular units and militias like that when Ukraine is looking to enter NATO, EU, whatever. Will it be absorbed like as of 3AB? We are not sure, but we do know there are problems there. People turn a blind eye to it, but again, it exists. We know it exists. Get on Telegram, look at older stuff. You will then see it. Now let's have a look at the maps, and we'll have a look at some planes and we'll look at the planes then first. So a Su-34 has crashed, then killing the crew here. We know these are being flown very hard, dropping a lot of bombs, so you will have more maintenance issues. But we do know too, fighter aircraft, they're like bloody Formula One cars. They have a lot of problems and can pop up. We lost an F-35, one of the best, well, probably the most advanced fighter jet in the world, crashed on a runway the other day, taking off in the US. So that does happen. Now, Ukraine has claimed a Su-25 down as well. There was some video sort of released, but I think it was actually an older video that I've seen. I'm pretty sure I've seen that before, and you can't see anything actually in it. This brings to 8 in 3 weeks, but as well, not getting any evidence of them. And then in Kryvyi we have a video here, geolocated just to here. So Kryvyi, of course, this is then occupied territory down here, of a Russian Lancet taking out a Ukrainian Su-25 aircraft here. So this is footage, and then we can see switching between different thermal optics here. You can see a vehicle moving away from it. And then you can see the strike dead on to the aircraft here, what will have caused major damage, especially fire damage here. And then the plane subsequently, we would say, was then destroyed. Now, Russia has lost a Panzer air defense system as well in Luhansk. These are an incredibly important system, and I can't believe Russia's not trying to make more and more of these due to how these can do slower moving targets compared to something like an S-400 with guns, shorter range rockets, bits and pieces like that. That's what needs to protect those airfields, what are basically unprotected, it seems, from things like Ukrainian drones, of course, having embarrassing strikes on aircraft like Su-57s. We spoke about yesterday the claim that it was S-400 and S-300 destroyed down in Crimea. We know from satellite there was fires down there. No footage yet has come up, but normally a couple of days we may or may not see it depending what happened. So let's have a look then at the maps. And of course, this is Ukraine, the center, the capital of Kyiv. The red areas occupied since 22, purple since 14. And green areas of which Russia has been and has then withdrawn. So we don't have anything today about this Rizhivka front on the maps or any updates going, but at least should be green because we do know that Russia definitely was in here from geolocated footage at one point. Did they withdraw straight back across? That's what it's looking like, but it should still be green for that. No change up in the north around Vovchansk here. We know there's a hell of a lot of fighting here. We know there are claims from other maps, and we'll look at one of those right now. This is the Noel reports map on then this the western front here. So you see Holobok and then Lipsy, and filling in just this gap in here. His map now shows basically similar to what the deep state shows, but we know there's a hell of a lot of fighting in here, and the messaging has changed from we're pushing back the Russians to we're holding them in place to wear down the forces, which was the same as we've heard in other areas in the front. This up here, and from speaking to my guys there, was only ever to draw soldiers then away. And is that trap actually then working at the sacrifice of guys in here as well for then the Russians to push in other areas? It seems if we look at where the maps is working, that is actually then working. So let's talk about some other areas on the front. So we have seen then this frontline move around Ivanovsky, Chasiv Yar in the past couple of days, as well as we have seen Starmorsky here from geolocated footage that was about where my cursor is right here, show Starmorsky's come basically under control too. So, of course, we're talking those two areas, Ivanovsky and Starmorsky. Ukraine has put out this today, then put through the Kiev Independent. Kiev controls situation in Ivanovsky near Chasiv Yar, and Ukrainian forces continue to repel Russian troops in Starmorsky. Regarding Ivanovsky, I can say the settlement belongs to Ukraine. The Ukrainian defense forces control this sector, and similar messaging about Starmorsky, of course, down here. But then we look at Ivanovsky on the map, and it doesn't seem to be that way of control. We know this map is linked in with the MOD, so unsure exactly what is then happening down here. But then we look, the only changes on this map today is this further expansion around Avdiivka. We know there has been many failures leading to a lot of Russian success in this area, and this does continue west of Semenivka and west of Solovov on multiple then fronts. Now, one of my guys was telling me one of the major parts will be if this intersection here is able to come under control due to the supply between Pokrovsk and up into Konstantinivka along then this highway leading down into these northern, these eastern towns down here, such as New York and Toretsk. So this intersection apparently will be very critical further on, and he was saying Russia will try and push the 7.5 kilometers to get to that at some point because of the problems it would put in here. We have seen this move a long way, but of course at this point grinding, slowing down, moving through. But every day we do see an update in here. People saying, well, they're not moving fast enough, but the front line is moving after a year of seeing very little movement. Now, we'll come up into some areas up in here that the Russian MOD has then claimed. So we're up in just this Kupiansk front near Sinkivka, some areas you'll be then familiar with. And I'm just called this then the northern corner. This was from a military summary, and then the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, the Russian Armed Forces established full control over the abandoned village of Timkovka. So the abandoned village in here. Now this is difficult to bloody see, but see where Olyanka is here? It's here. And just in this village, small area in here, that the Russian MOD has said that they are there, but we don't have confirmations on that. Otherwise, we have the Russian MOD claiming this. We have Ukraine MOD claiming that Ivanovsky is under control as well. This is why wait for geolocations, wait for everything like this. Now, better stove, Stalmakivka front down in here. Again, this might be a bit hard for me to find because it's an area which isn't really shown on this map, but I'll show you sort of mapped ground to see where this road is running then through here. And we have Rozivka and these areas. Then we have just up in this front here said to be another Russian advancement in just in this front line here, but again, not then shown on this map. So see where this paddock comes down at an angle. This is this paddock, and then the square paddock leading in here. So we're talking up to this front line in here. Again, very difficult to actually look at due to no real town shown on the deep state map in here. But regardless, we know there's movements on the front line. We'll wait for some other maps to come through, and time will tell on exactly what is happening, what is the plan here, and then these smaller movements in an attritional phase of war. So Ukraine, of course, has been begging for more Patriot systems for now months, and we know as I'm filming this, there are multiple reports of hypersonic missiles and other cruise missiles leading into Kiev and other areas in Ukraine right now. Tomorrow, I'll update you if we get any update on those strikes. Again, Ukraine has it locked down completely on any missile strike, so it's hard to get any idea if something hit, if it didn't. Regardless, because the SBU will come to your house. We've seen the video, get in trouble for it, could go to jail. But it does look like there will be another 2, maybe 3 Patriot systems. So Zelensky with the German defense minister was announced then with this Patriot. This is the one going to Ukraine then here, so that's one of them. The US announced then another system here after Kiev's desperate calls for air defenses. Washington will send another, and we know the discussion, this is from the president of Ukraine, so Zelensky's website, that with the leadership of the Netherlands initiative to supply a country with Patriot systems as soon as possible. We know the Netherlands was looking for separate parts of one to try and at least fit one together. We're not exactly sure how that's looking, but some are saying up to 100 missiles too could also be supplied for then those systems. Very expensive, very operationally difficult, but that's why, of course, there's not that many of these Patriots just sitting around. hard to go in, especially when missiles of those systems are being used in other areas in the world, down maybe with some rebel forces. Now, Zelensky has spoken in the Bundestag, and we will just read out some parts then of what he has said. The one that will do everything in its power to correct this mistake in European history, this war that is going on in our continent and is threatening to escalate into a much wider confrontation, which I think it is. We're climbing that ladder of escalation. We will not have it. We will not leave it as our legacy. We will end the war. We'll end it in the best interest of Ukraine and all of Europe, all of us and all those who came after us. So not leaving it for a generation on hand down the war, similar to what people are saying has actually happened since 14 as well. We will end it on our terms, our own terms, the terms that are clear to any person, any ordinary person on this earth. So end it on our own terms. Now, we know Ukraine's terms always, and it hasn't changed, has been the 1991 borders, including Crimea, Donetsk, areas like this. But what we have spoken about is the fighting that will need to take place to push through these areas is unbelievable, looking at how little ground is actually moving, whether in Russia or Ukraine's favour, over the previous, now over 2 years of then the war. Is this possible without some diplomatic action? Well, we don't then know, or without a withdrawal here, now that defensive works built in. One thing I want to talk about, sorry, before we go on, is, okay, these areas, these defensive line build-up, whatever, yes, mechanised armoured artillery movements will be massively helpful to push through this. But I was talking to a friend of mine, works in some units, and has spoken about, yes, but these major cities, your Sevastopol, your Mariupol, as well as Donetsk in here, this is a light infantry operation. Look at the losses suffered in Avdiivka, in Bakhmut, by when Russia pushed through, by Russia. Look how high of losses to push through a light infantry operation in a three-dimensional urban environment. And those are not even in the same, like, look at Avdiivka compared to the size of Donetsk. So this is Avdiivka. That it's going to be unbelievably difficult to actually push through. It's going to be light infantry. We can supply Ukraine all the tanks and shit in the world. It's not useful in a urban warfare position like this. Look at Russia's failure in Grozny if you want to look at how tanks can be absolutely trapped here. And this goes the exact same for if Russia wanted to try and get Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, or Kharkiv. We have not seen any major areas like that. Now, Mariupol may be the exemption to this, but we saw that it basically had to be completely leveled to have any success there. Now, Zelensky then continues, are we going to allow Russia to continue to march through Europe? This march of disregard and life on nations. Again, we hear this again and again from everyone saying, if Russia's not stopped here, they will march through Europe, which we know either way doesn't stand up. Either from the most pro-Russian to the most pro-Ukrainian thinking, Russia does not have the power to do that. And this is our common interest, a shared interest that Putin personally loses, and that he loses this war, that Putin loses his attempt to drag Europe to a level where there is no way out of war already. So drag into a war where we have to then fully commit. And I've spoken about where we could see false flags to drag countries into this war to help as well, because we just don't know how this is going to be achieved for the clearance of these areas. And on the other flip side of this as well, we don't see how Russia plans to achieve, if they want to occupy areas like Kharkiv, the rest of the Donetsk Oblast as well, how that is actually going to look. Anyway, legends, have a great day. Look after yourselves. Send me some hate. I love it. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.